My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I felt
really
right.
but I was so
And I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
It was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Story Collider, where true personal stories about science help us to discover how weird and wonderful it is to exist in this world and be a human. I'm your host, Misha Gajewski, and today our stories are about saying goodbye to a loved one. Something we all have to do in our lives, despite wishing we never did. But I think what's truly remarkable is just how different everyone handles saying goodbye and coping with the grief and the loss of that special person. This episode really highlights that there's no right way to grieve, and these stories are so beautiful that I can't wait for you to hear them. Our first story is from New York City-based research coordinator Sanjana Murthy. Her story was shared at QED Astoria in Queens, New York, and will really hit home for anyone, for whatever reason, couldn't say goodbye to the person they loved before they passed. If you've ever gone through it, you'll know you have all those feelings of grief, unresolved endings, and guilt, and you just kind of gotta sit with that. It sucks. But Sanjana does such an incredible job of putting all that messiness into a beautiful story, and I can't wait for you to listen to it. Here's Sanjana.
So it's the fall of 2022, and I feel like I'm doing everything correctly. I just graduated with a degree in brain and behavioral sciences from Purdue, and I was about to move here to New York City to start a full-time research position. And the goal has always been to study clinical psychology, become a clinician, work with patients, and so this was a step in the right direction. But it also just felt like such a big move coming from California. I called my grandfather, I remember, and I was telling him all about the new job, the new apartment, and how it felt like everything in my life was about to change. And I remember saying, Tata, I hope things go well. I don't want anything bad to happen. And he said, Sanjana, nothing bad is gonna happen. But even if the worst thing imaginable happens, you are equipped to handle it. You can handle it. He's always made whoever he's talking to feel so seen. And I've always thought that that was so remarkable to do. Just like in this case, for example, he and I grew up in wildly different contexts, different generations, different countries, but he still somehow just makes me feel so understood. And so I move here to New York City with the attitude that I am equipped to handle it all. The rats that are shaped like small dogs, all of it. And about a year in, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling confident that the field I'm in is the right one for me. Neuroscience, mental health. I go into work every day and I'm surrounded by the most supportive mentors and scientists. And I get to hear our patients with depression talk about how deep brain stimulation is changing their lives. And I have this feeling like I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. And so I'm at work one day and I see my phone light up with a notification and it's from my mom. And it says, Tata had a heart attack. He's gone. And in that moment, it feels like everything has shifted. My heart is pounding and my head is swimming with incoherent thoughts, and I stumble to the decision that I need to be there in India, right? For the funeral, there was going to be a funeral, and I'm told that they can only keep his body for 2 days before the cremation, and it takes 2 days to fly to India. So if I wasn't on a plane by tonight, then I wasn't gonna make it. But I could go home right now and I could pack a bag in 30 minutes? And would I need my clothes, my passport? Did I have my OCI card? I can't remember the last time I saw my OCI card. OCI stands for Overseas Citizen of India. It acts like a visa, and it's a pretty important travel document. And that is, and I remember, it's an important travel document. It is at home in California for safekeeping. And my heart drops. I'm switching between calling my parents who are currently in India and calling my friends here. Anybody who would know what to do without an OCI card. And my friend tells me that there is an Indian embassy on 34th Street, and if I can get there fast enough, maybe they can issue me an emergency visa. And so now I find myself rushing through the streets of Manhattan, and I get to this building, and it felt so important to me that I assumed it would look grander than what it does, but it fully just looks like every other building in New York City. I almost walk past it, this all-important building that's supposed to help me get to India tonight. But I walk in, I make my way in, and there's a man at the front desk, and I walk up to him, I look at his face, and he looks so irritated. He looks irritated that he's not at home right now. He looks irritated that someone just walked in the front door on a Friday afternoon, so it's not looking great for me. But I try very politely to request an emergency visa. And he barely looks up at me and says, "Come back Monday." And any drive I have to be polite goes out the window, and I'm now a ball of rage. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to explain to him that this is an emergency, that there has been a death, that I'm not missing my grandfather's funeral, that my best traits, thoughtfulness and empathy, they come from him. I'm not missing his funeral. His eyes meet mine, and all he says is, "There's nobody that can help you right now." And so, God, I mean, I'm sure he probably didn't mean for it to sound that dramatic, but I'm feeling the weight of those words, and I find myself outside with the ambulance sirens and the car horns, and tears just start streaming down my face. I'm fully crying on 34th Street. And it's the first time I've cried in public, mind you. I'm feeling defeated and alone. But what I think I'm feeling most of all is this sense of shame. Like, I should be able to handle this, and I'm just not. So I did get a flight out that night, but it was to California. I flew home to California to pick up the OCI card, and then I flew to India from there. But it was too late, and I'd missed the funeral. And for months afterwards, it had felt like the worst thing imaginable had happened. And all I wished I could do was tell him how special he is, and how much he's missed, and how much I try to be like him. It had felt like every time I thought about him, I would remember that he wasn't there anymore, and I would just feel that loss just over and over again. And I struggled with the grief and the guilt and this feeling of unending absence for so long, and for so much more than I thought I should. I identify so much with wanting to become a clinician and being a scientist, understanding human behavior and emotion regulation and stress resilience, that some part of me felt like I was supposed to know how to navigate grief correctly. I felt like, as an aspiring clinical psychologist, I was supposed to be the poster child for navigating loss. Because I kept thinking, how am I supposed to show up for other people one day when I don't even seem to be able to show up for myself right now? So a few months go by, and I'm back home in California, just visiting for a little bit, and I come downstairs one morning, and my parents are there having cups of coffee, just chatting, and I make myself a cup of tea, and I come join them. And we start talking about Dada, And my dad pulls out this thick red file just filled with paper. And he says, "Look what I brought back from India." Tata saved everything we ever sent him. And so we're looking through it page by page. And there's letters from my dad when he was in college and when he came to the US for the first time. And we're laughing because he's talking about using a microwave for the very first time and how spectacular of a machine it is, which is just the height of the American dream right there. And there's letters from my mom when she was pregnant with me, and there's drawings from 6-year-old me. And we just keep looking through it page by page until we get to the very last thing. And the very last thing in there is a letter that I had written Tata in 2017. So I was in high school at the time. And so I'm telling him about how my senior year of high school is going and how excited I am to study the brain in college. And the very last paragraph that I have in there, just right above my signature, I say, "Tata, I'm not sure if I've ever told you this, but you are the strongest person I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. Your endless patience and wisdom continue to inspire me, and one day, I hope to be just like you." And I imagine him in 2017, just a few years ago, in the house in Bangalore. He's sitting in a chair by the balcony, and he's unfolding this letter and reading these words, reading my thoughts to him. And I think about how he's just always seemed so kind. And I wonder how somebody manages to stay so soft and so patient and so understanding, despite everything a lifetime has to offer. I think about how empathy and resilience, the things that I associate with being a good clinician, these things fundamentally arise from suffering. I think about how expecting a clinician to never feel grief is kind of like expecting a doctor to never get sick. And ultimately, I think there is no way to do grief correctly. There's a lot of ways to do grief incorrectly, but we're gonna do all of them. And it doesn't matter. What probably matters now is just to tell the people we love that we love them. Thank you.
Oh, what a beautiful story. That was Sanjana. To learn more about her, visit our website, storyteller.org. Being a storyteller on stage is just one way to make Story Collider happen, but if standing alone in the spotlight in front of an audience doesn't speak to you, maybe becoming a Story Collider donor might be more your speed. Story Collider donors play a vital role in our ability to bring you this podcast. We're in this together. Story Collider is one big experiment that's designed to connect us around our love of discovery, curiosity, and the natural world. If you believe in the power these stories have and this mission, please donate to the Story Collider at storycollider.org/donate. The most popular level is $10 a month, and you can make your tax-deductible donation at storycollider.org/donate. But really, any level makes a difference, and we're so grateful to everyone who supports Story Collider.
At Grand Canyon University, we believe in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts with purpose. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's learning environments are designed for supportive networking and collaboration. With over 330 academic programs, GCU provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
Our next story is from Paul Barach. His story was recorded at Kane Hall in Seattle as part of a partnership show with the Wild Podcast and KUOW Radio. Paul's story is so relatable for anyone who's ever been so overwhelmed by life and their feelings, and you just got to do something drastic, like give yourself bangs, or in Paul's case, hike the entire Pacific Coast Trail on a whim. It's a beautiful story, and I can't wait for you to hear it. That being said, I want to let you know that this story does include mentions of suicide. In case you find them helpful now or at any point in the future, we have some resources available on our website. Head to storyclatter.org/resources for tips on serving as a first responder, making a suicide safety plan for a loved one or for yourself, community-based solutions for suicide intervention, and more. Here's Paul.
So I always hated memorizing dates in history class, and not because I always got them wrong. I mean, that mostly wasn't it. It's just that it never made sense to me because, like, for real, who cares when some event fell on the calendar? You know, what matters is how the world changed afterwards. And that's what I thought for decades, until my world changed on one specific day, October 23rd, 2015. That's when my girlfriend Meredith killed herself. It was impossible not to love Meredith. She had a voice of a cartoon mouse and this big snorting laugh and just an inability to not say everything she was thinking. And she was complicated, self-centered, but fiercely supportive of you, and perky with just the darkest sense of humor from dealing with depression and chronic illness. But right off the bat, she let you know that you could stop pretending to be normal around her and just be yourself. And I think that's what I love the most. We met through stand-up comedy and instantly just fell into orbit. We had as much choice in the matter as gravity. And we weren't perfect. We dated and broke up, but stayed in orbit. Until finally we decided to quit fighting gravity and give it a real shot because we loved each other. 11 days later, she was gone. And I was untethered from gravity, floating through cold, empty space. At first I was shattered, and then I was just numb. This chunk had been torn out of me, and I had no idea how to process that much grief. And so, because therapy's expensive, I moved to Denver and just toughed it out. Got a new job, made friends, eventually tried dating again, but every day was a countdown to the next October 23rd, which I knew would be a bad day. And I was right. I wake up and it all comes rushing back. The phone call from her roommate, hyperventilating the shock, her mom collapsing by her casket, the dress with the high collar they put her body in, and the particular weight of all the words that I wish I was saying instead of goodbye. But I toughed my way through work and then drank my way through the rest of the night alone in my room. And when I woke up the next morning, the countdown started again to the next October 23rd. And I knew that day would be just as bad, and I would be doing the exact same thing. But then, things got worse. There was another suicide that tore the rest out of me, and since therapy had not gotten any less expensive in 1 year, I left to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. Which sounds impulsive because it is. But I've never been shy about leaving my job to, say, walk a Buddhist pilgrimage in Japan or bicycle across the United States because I've just never fully bought into this. So the Pacific Crest Trail runs 2,650 miles from the deserts of Southern California up and over the Sierra Nevadas and over the Cascades into Canada. And that first day on trail, I'm worried. My bag's overpacked, it's already too hot, and I might not finish this thing. Most people don't. I could get injured or run out of money, and then where do I go after that? Where will October 23rd not be waiting for me? But 2 miles in, I look up, and even in that burnt desert, it is so pretty. There are these red hills and blooming cactus flowers and this unfamiliar feeling that I cannot name wriggles through my chest. And as I continue on, the numbers start falling off the calendar. I mean, there are days on trail, sunrise to sunset, and sometimes deep into the night, but they're not numbered. I'm just here, on trail, alive. And there are bad days, injuries, burnout, wildfire smoke, vomiting until I was sure bones were coming up next. And, the news, when I do get it, is always bad because, well, we all remember 2017. And the worst thing is, I'm deep in grief, and people I know keep dying. Older people from heart failure and suicide, and people my age from brain cancer and diabetes and suicide because it's a national epidemic that we all really need to start talking about. But even at its worst, there's a comforting simplicity to each day. And progress. I wake up, and with simple effort, I will lay back down a couple dozen miles later, having seen at least one thing along the way that fills me with awe. And it could be something small, like sunlight hitting just one fern in a thick forest or cat paws sparkling on a lake. But usually, it's something huge. Full moons in the desert and stars like a floodlight through black silk and mountain glaciers glowing pink in the sunset, or one time, after 10 days in a thick forest where there were more mosquitoes in the air than air. Stepping out into an open meadow where all the mosquitoes transformed into butterflies. And each time my hand would go to my heart, like I'd been shot by awe. And day after day, that unfamiliar feeling keeps blooming in my chest, growing into the place where the suicides had ripped out. And it's not just awe or wonder. It's something else that I cannot name for months, until one evening I'm racing up Muir Pass in the Sierra Nevadas, and I crest the rise by a stone rescue hut and see this oil painting sunset and just start crying. Because for years, I've been focused on toughing out the depression and the grief, but out here, life isn't something I have to endure. It's something I can love. And as Orion emerges above me and tears stream down my face, I keep repeating, I get to be alive. I can't believe I get to be alive. I'm so lucky. And a week later, I'm sitting on top of Half Dome in Yosemite National Park, feeling lucky, staring out at this churning ocean of white granite and just wondering how I'm supposed to return to the default world after this. But it can't last forever. I'd skipped around the Sierras and come back in September, and so after Half Dome, days begin to matter again because they are numbered. The countdown has started to the end of the trail, back to the default world, and to October 23rd. I step off the trail on October 8th, and pretty quickly, things get worse. I walk across the Golden Gate Bridge back into civilization with just a biblical amount of wildfire ash raining down from a dark sky. And then I catch my flight home, staring out the window at the Pacific Crest Trail below me, and all the wildfires consuming this place that meant so much to me. And when I land, things are no easier. I've got no job, no apartment. October 23rd is approaching. And really the only thing I have to look forward to is meeting up with this acquaintance from back when I did stand-up who'd just gotten back from her own big journey, a university fellowship where she'd gotten to travel through 10 countries for 8 months. And she'd messaged me to say, hey, welcome back. You want to meet up sometime and talk travel? And I'm like, yeah, I love talking about myself. The only problem is she's heading back out of town, so there's only one day we can meet up, October 23rd. And so I say yes, and then spend that week counting down to canceling. And when I wake up on October 23rd, reliving the worst day of my life, I write the text to cancel, but I don't send it. I don't want to sit alone in my room again. I want to talk about Joshua trees reaching up towards desert moonlight and how blue Crater Lake is and how godlike Mount Rainier is and what Half Dome's like from the top and mosquitoes transforming into butterflies and how sometimes you just can't believe how lucky you are to be alive. And also, how was her trip? And so we meet up and we talk about life and travel and laugh until the bar kicks us out. Because of the Pacific Crest Trail, my life has now changed twice on October 23rd. It's the day Meredith killed herself, and it's my first date with my wife, Michelle. Life is complicated. Even the worst day of your life can also be where the best days of your life begin. Thank you.
That was Paul. To learn more about him, or if you'd like to access suicide prevention resources, visit our website, storyclatter.org. Also, to hear more stories from our show with The Wild and KUOW, go check out The Wild podcast, where they released an episode with more stories from that incredible night. Our website is just one way to connect with Storyclatter, but there are so many other ways, and we hope you'll use them all. You can always follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Head to storyclatter.org to become a financial supporter. Or if you want to come to one of our shows, start your own Storyclatter show in your community, or even learn how to tell your own science story, you can learn all about that on our website too. This podcast is produced by me, Misha Gajewski, along with Nikisha Roberts-Washington, Jen Chen, and Aaron Barker, Executive Director and co-founder of The Storyclatter. The stories featured in today's episode were produced by Tracy Segarra, Grant Bowen, Diego Villarroel, and Kent Whipple. Special thanks goes out to Storyclatter's board and staff, including Anne-Marie Lonsdale, Leslie Burnson, and Lindsay Cooper. Our theme music is by Ghost, and we'll be back next week with a special episode from our archives. Until next time, thanks for listening.